We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Friday. And as we do every week, we have the special guest, Old Soul. Always look forward to having Old Soul on the program, and she is here today. Old, thank you for joining us again. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. You got a lot of shit going on in your life, and to take an hour or so to do the show is very nice of you to do.
Oh, it's nothing.
Eh,
I
nothing.
enjoy it. It's actually pretty fun.
Well, good. I'm glad. I'm glad. When you were on the show last week, you were talking about your current client, and it was a pretty compelling story.
Mhm.
You talked about a young woman who was underage, who was sexually abused, who was in a position of needing an abortion, and all kinds of issues. And maybe you can kind of quickly update us with what's going on there, because as I understand it, that young woman and her mother are still with you.
Yeah, they're still here, but they are leaving on Saturday. I don't know what happened, but the last two, um, well, not the last two because I had one in the middle, but they were needing to stay a little bit longer to get some mental health stuff worked out before they went back home. She was already, I don't want to say deteriorating, but she was already struggling with her mental health before they came here. Um, and so she was still struggling a little bit. She had a couple of days where it was really bad. So we just wanted to kind of make sure that they were set up with that before they could, go back home, especially with my daughter here, just getting off, talking to her for like an hour, every night. That really did help her work through it. But just to make sure she was set up and good to go when she got back home, which she's set up now, she's good to go. And there's a meeting with the therapist that's planned for the therapist, herself, her mother, and her father, who they have not told yet, but
Oh,
just to
wow.
be sure to tell him in a safe environment with a professional and then deal with it from there. But they do understand this isn't something they can just keep from him.
For people who don't remember the story, just give us a brief overview of the background of the story, because it is pretty compelling.
Yes. So she was being abused by, it's a family friend, but he was so close to the family they called him uncle. So
Right.
all the children looked up to him as an uncle, and he was abusing her for years. He was keeping track of her menstrual cycle, and on those days on the calendar where it says you have a high percentage of getting pregnant for these days, those are the days that he wouldn't abuse her on. So she started telling him she was on her cycle when she really wasn't. So days that he thought it was safe to have sex with her, he it wasn't safe days, and she ended up getting pregnant, and that's why she's here. And they kept it from her father because he does seem to be very overprotective from what I've heard, just fear of what his reaction would be towards the other person. In addition to that, her and her mother being outed for coming here, and of course her mother could end up in jail behind that.
Well, let me ask you this. They've been away for a week or more, and they still
Mhm.
haven't told the father. How do they explain that away?
He was actually, this isn't funny, but I was overhearing him with, because his the father and the mother, they're not together anymore. They've been, divorced. And I could hear him talking to her on the phone, and he's like, "You just can't go off jolly down to Vegas with my daughter, and she has school and this and that." Like he was really upset, but it's like his upsetness was kind of comical because you could tell he was upset, but it wasn't in like a malicious, violent type of way. He was making it look like they were just here, just kind of like having fun or whatever. And she got off the phone and she looked at me and she was like, "God help us when he finds out the reason that we're in Vegas." I don't know if it was me in that situation. I did tell her I would have done the same thing. What is comfortable for my daughter was going to help her process this the easiest. We're going to deal with that first. And then whatever happens after that, we'll just have to deal with it. So sometimes you do have to, prioritize the needs of your daughter above her father, which that's my opinion. That's her opinion. But I'm pretty sure other people would disagree with that as well.
So I mean, we have to remember this is a minor girl, underage girl.
Mhm.
She was physically abused by a family friend. She's now in
For
Vegas living
years.
for a year. She's now living or staying in Vegas with you, with her mother, unbeknownst to her father that she's pregnant and has gone through this abuse. Um, I
Yeah.
don't know what her father's like, but I think any father finding that out of the blue, it's going to be hard to hold your temper. I mean, the stress that has to be on the mother and the daughter has to be immense. I mean, over and above the whole abortion thing and getting out of the state and trying to keep it quiet. This is a lot of pressure on a kid that she shouldn't have to go through, and it's none of her fault either. That's the troubling thing.
Yeah, she is pretty quiet. She talks to my daughter. She'll engage in a conversation, but she's not so open with her feelings, what she's thinking, what she's feeling. But she does self-harm, like she cuts herself on her arm and her legs. And so you know that is very traumatic for her to
Right.
be doing that. But talking to her mother, it is extremely stressful. Like this woman does not, she doesn't sleep. You have to make her eat. Just, I know you can't like taste anything, you can enjoy the food, but you do have to eat something. And so, what we've been doing with her mother is just giving her not small meals, but just like snacks throughout the day that she can just nibble on because that's
Right.
pretty much all she can do. Normally you sit down and you can just like, eat a meal. She literally can't do that. Like it will make her sick if she sat down and ate. So we just
Well,
give her just stuff to nibble on throughout the day. I think it will be better for her once she tells her ex-husband what's been going on. I
yeah.
just think there's so much that she's keeping inside that she needs to get out before she's able to try to, move on a little bit.
Well, the mother's carrying the whole burden on her shoulders, and that's got to be very hard. And the father's probably going to be
Mhm.
upset that they didn't tell him sooner. But there's two other issues here that come into play that offer stress. First of all, they have to be quiet about this because if they go back to the state and somebody finds out that she went out of state uh, to have an abortion, her mother has got some serious problems. And because of that,
Yep.
they can't really say anything about the guy who committed the abuse because it would out her for the transgression that that state feels that she committed. It's I can't even imagine being put in that situation. You've got somebody who's clearly wronged you that belongs in jail, and you can't do anything about it because you might get put in jail. That is a horrible position to be put in, and fucking shame on the state for doing that.
Yeah, and then just think about it from for me trying to imagine seeing him in public, period,
Yeah.
let alone if I saw him near a park or a school or another child or something to that effect. Like, how do you process that the type of person that he is and you're not doing anything or you haven't done anything about it, especially when what abuse your daughter's gone through and with somebody like that, they've done it before and they will do it again. Like this is not a person that's going to stop. So I couldn't imagine seeing my daughter's abuser in public or just living free, um, with access to other children and people not knowing the type of person that he is. Or, I don't know if he's had other victims and they just kept quiet about it. I don't
Yeah.
know. But if you keep quiet, he keeps getting away with it. But what choice do you have when you could go to prison? And then who's going to take care of your daughter? If your ex-husband does something to him and now he's wrapped up in the legal system, and then because you got your daughter help, now you're wrapped up in a legal system, where does that leave your child? So how do you prioritize that situation?
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
I couldn't imagine it, but it's something that people are dealing with pretty more often than should be happening in this country.
And the people putting these young women and girls in this position, clearly the Republican Party. I don't care what you say that I'm a libtard or not, but the Republicans are putting people in this position. I'm kind of embarrassed to say that if it were my daughter or my granddaughter that was in that situation, somehow, some way, that guy would fall into a tragic accident one way or another. I don't know how I do it, but I would be hard pressed not to make him pay some kind of consequence for his misdeeds. It's just not right that he would be allowed to continue to walk the streets, continue to abuse women with complete impunity. It's just, I mean, I guess I
Mhm.
guess the lesson here is if this girl had said something right away before she ever got pregnant, it would have been a much different situation. But you can't put the blame on her. She's
Mhm.
15, 16 years old. Jesus, she's a kid. I don't know. It's a tough situation. I would hate to be put in. And, God bless you for making it a little bit easier for them by giving them some place to stay and some counseling. I know you and your daughter are not professional counselors, but I'm guaranteeing you that what you've done with them has done them a lot of good and something that they needed.
Yeah, I think you just said something that brought up a good point because there are certain communities, certain churches or religions where they don't talk to their children about sex or what's a good touch, what's a bad touch, what's inappropriate for an adult to do, what's inappropriate for an adult to do. And there are predators out there who w- they can groom children and in doing so understand their backgrounds. And so they know if your family is conservative or if they don't have certain talks with you. Maybe your father isn't in a picture as much as they should, or maybe your mom is working all the time and that type. They pick up on that you're a vulnerable person and they take advantage of it. But if your
Right,
parents are not talking to you about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, it's a little bit, well, it's not a little bit, it's a lot easier for that predator to take advantage of that. And for her not having those conversations with her parents, I don't want to blame it on them, but it's more confusing than when you recognize something is wrong,
right.
versus when you don't recognize something is wrong.
Well, you know as well as anybody, if you're a parent, you're responsible for everything that goes on with your
Hmm.
kids. So there was
Yeah.
some missteps by the parents, and I'm not trying to call them out or shame them at this point. But if nothing else, people who hear this story or understand the circumstances should take a lesson from it. If it's not comfortable for you to talk about sex with your kids, too bad. It's an important thing to do. And the more people that do that, the less situations like this will have.
Yeah, or ask questions.
Yeah,
Uncle so and so came over to babysit you today. How'd that go? What happened? What'd you do? Would you do that? One of the techniques that I used with my daughter was just, if somebody touches you inappropriately or, they threaten you any type of way, that they say anything like, I'm gonna hurt your mom, I'm gonna tell your mom, anything like that, let them say that because I'm guaranteeing you that that is not true. It's not going to happen. You have to let me know. And then you let people know, I don't like that. I'm going to tell my mom. Like, you really do have to let me know what's happening. And I didn't make it seem like a bad thing. It's just, I'm your mom. If something's uncomfortable, I'm going to fix that situation so you don't have to ever be uncomfortable around anyone ever again. And I don't care who it is. I would say if it's, Uncle Tez, Uncle Mark, Uncle Jay, I don't care. Come to me and tell me. And then I would always ask questions, so what'd you do with your uncle this weekend with your cousins or this or that? And just kind of like talk to her just to get a feel and also her body language. She's kind of like me. She'll sit next to you. She'll want to snuggle up, talk, laugh, joke. If there's someone around and she's not having those interactions and she's standoffish towards that person, it's for a reason, and I need to dig and ask some questions.
Well, from what you've told me about your daughter, who's 24 now, the
Hmm.
only thing that comes to mind is if some man were to touch her inappropriately, God help him, because I think she'd fuck him up. She herself would handle that shit quick, fast, and in a
Yeah,
hurry. She's
yeah. Unfortunately, you know, she watched me deal with an abusive relationship, unfortunately. So I think she sees it a little bit different than, children who have not had to experience that.
right, right, exactly. Well, let's talk about some of the news at hand. There's been a lot of stuff going on, a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of worrisome stuff, and I'm interested to get your
Mhm.
take on it. Of course, we had the oral arguments in front of the Supreme Court regarding the 14th Amendment and the Colorado Supreme Court. Both sides got a chance to
Yeah.
tell their side of the story. Colorado Supreme Court, it's actually not the Colorado Supreme Court. It's one woman, older woman, like 91, who's sent this lawsuit. It's at the Supreme Court, and they want to take Donald Trump off the ballot. Of course, Donald Trump's people want him to stay on the ballot. The one thing I listened to a fair amount of the oral arguments. It was just the audio. The impression I got, the impression a lot of people got, was that it seemed like the Supreme Court was kind of leaning toward keeping Donald Trump on the ballot. Now, you and I talked about this before, way back when, and you stated that you thought they would keep him on the ballot and they wouldn't do anything. And now it looks like your prediction is coming true because it sure seems like that. We don't know for sure yet. We don't have a decision, but the questions they asked and the way they behave, it sure seems that way.
Yeah, they had their minds made up beforehand. Um, I was just listening to it and I was thinking to myself, thank God for Justice Jackson.
Yeah,
I think she caught on pretty early to what it was that they were doing and the questions that she was asking, the answers that she was getting. Um, to me, that was very important for the record. And so I was just happy to hear her make sure that she gets those answers on record from his attorneys, which I do believe will hurt him later on down the line in his other cases.
right,
In particular, when his attorney said, January 6th, it was a riot, it was violent, it was criminal, it was all of that, but it wasn't an insurrection. She got his attorney saying that on record,
right,
like on record, on audio, on record. And so I think that with his attorney, they're doing what they can to get through the day and they're not thinking about future cases. But out of that whole hearing, the answers that she was getting from his attorneys, I do believe that they were pointed and I think they were very methodical on her end. And I think in her mind, it's even though I'm going to be overruled here and these other shields on this court are going to give him a pass, I'm still going to make sure that I get evidence on record that can still hold him accountable, if not today and for the 14th Amendment, but later on. And I think that's what the positivity that I took out of it. So I didn't feel so down about what they were doing. It's
yeah,
so open. And so it was so obvious that people who don't even listen to this type of stuff, we all saw and heard what they were doing. So
right.
just take something positive from it, and that's my positive take from it.
What I heard from the little parts I have heard wasn't so much
Mhm.
they were siding with Donald Trump's lawyers' claims. It was more to me that they just didn't want to get in this fucking mess. They didn't want to make a decision. They didn't want to be put in this position because we both know that either way they go, they're going to take a lot of fucking heat. So they really want to step back
Mhm.
from it. And I think maybe you brought this up, uh, but I've been talking about it lately like it was my idea, and I don't know that it was my idea. But as time has gone by, this makes some sense. They want to find an off ramp to maybe not take Donald Trump off the ballot. And one of the loopholes I saw, and I'm not a lawyer, I don't know fuck all. I just take a look at what I look at and decide as logically as I can. But the 14th Amendment specifically says that anybody who's found guilty of insurrection cannot hold office. Doesn't say they can't be on the ballot. It
Yeah.
says they can't be in hold office, which would suggest that then they'd have to revisit this thing after he wins the presidency, and that could go on for 3 or 4 years, and he will have already run his term. So that's absolutely ridiculous, and that's one of the reasons why some people think that the Supreme Court doesn't want to kick the can down the road and get that mess. But based on what we know about the Supreme Court, they will kick the can down the road, and that's one of many possible reasons why they'd find the off ramp.
Yeah, I think the only only group of people more experienced with kicking a can is Mike Johnson and the representatives in the House when it comes to passing a budget.
Yeah, no shit.
But with the I think with the Supreme Court, they were not addressing the issue of insurrection. I think that they were trying to, I guess, find kind of like nitpicking at little like
Right,
loopholes here and there. And that was their excuse to keep him on the ballot from what I can see. Because it was saying, I think like what they kept getting hung up on was like office, if
right,
you're in the office of this or that. It wasn't, and in their mind, because it doesn't specifically say the president and vice president and it's saying office holders or whatever the wording is, that's their loophole. Like it specifically has to say the president of the United States in order for it to apply, such as like saying an office holder is just too blanket of a job title in order to hold the president accountable for it. I think that's the legal loophole that they're going to go through. But when Jackson got his attorneys to say, like, yeah, our client like falls through that crack, like his attorney literally said that. And it was just like, to me, it was just so genius for her to get them to admit these things. The court was so skewed towards his attorneys that people didn't catch how bad they were. And it's
yeah,
just kind of like if you have Mike Tyson fighting next to you, and then people don't see how bad of a fighter you are because Tyson is handling everything. And so I think that's pretty much like, his attorneys, they didn't have to be good. They didn't have to make their case. They didn't have
right.
to do any of that because they had the court on their side. But they were, when they did speak, it was very damning, the things that they were saying.
Well, everything they were talking about was procedural and looking for loopholes and off ramps and that sort of thing. The
Yeah.
interesting thing I found was that the lawyer on the Colorado Supreme Court and the lady that brought the case, what was interesting about this guy is he at one point in his career had worked for two of the judges, um, one liberal, one conservative. So they knew him, and I think he did a pretty good job. He was
Mhm.
interviewed later, and I don't know which moderator said, he says, yeah, it didn't look good. It doesn't look good for your case. And he said, well, maybe, but he said, you have to understand that when we went to the Colorado Supreme Court, they they looked at they asked a bunch of hard questions too, and it was a little contentious at some point. But once they went back and really looked at what the law says, it was pretty clear, and they really had no choice. So he's suggesting that regardless of how it looked, when they go back and actually look at the law, it may be a different outcome. And with this Supreme Court, uh, nothing should be surprising to anybody. I mean, this is a great opportunity for the Supreme Court to uh, put Donald Trump down and get things at least headed back to normal. Whether they will do that or not, my guess is no. But um, the lawyer for the lady was suing seems to still have a little bit of confidence, and maybe there's something to it.
Yeah, he's been confident. I don't I watched like Democracy Docket, just a couple of different things. And he's been speaking for the past couple of weeks, just, you know, I don't know, like just putting it out there, getting people prepared for, what's going to happen during this whole process. He's been optimistic the whole time, and I don't think that's going to fade. I do think that as far as the Supreme Court, it would be so much better for the Republican Party if they just got rid of Trump. That way the party can thrive. But I do think it's bigger than Trump at this point. It's about an agenda that
Yeah.
they're trying to meet. And I think they look at Trump as a pathway to meeting that agenda. And I think that's why they are protecting him as much as they are.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the funny thing about this lawyer, I've looked at him on TV and, he's so young. It looks like he could knock on
Yeah.
my door and ask to mow my lawn. He looked really young, but he's got extensive experience
Hmm.
in the Supreme Court. This kid's got to be a, a a
Hmm.
prodigy or some fucking. I don't know. Maybe he looks younger than he is, but he's a young kid. Of course, everybody I talk to is a young kid these days because
Yeah.
I'm older than everybody.
He is young, but I mean, I get it, because I do get that a lot with my daughter. Like she was in high school and college at the same time.
Right.
So when they
Right.
look at her at 24 and they're like seeing what she's doing, it's like, how is that possible? It's just like every now and then you do get that person that's just driven. They know what they want and they're kind of focused on it. And I think that's with him. And what I like seeing about him is people like him who have the tenacity, and who also has the mind for it when they use it in good ways to benefit others and to
Right.
benefit society as a whole. That's what I like about him. Watching him speak, even though he's young, but seeing him young with experience, it's refreshing. We need more of that in this country, but I do think that's the reason why Republicans don't want education is because of people like him.
Yeah, absolutely. Why I admire him for it because I can't say I ever had that much drive.
Hmm.
Uh, Coming from a guy who's sitting in his living room doing a podcast, for God's sake. When the 14th Amendment whole thing came out, everybody got excited about it. And then when they saw this oral arguments, a lot of people are upset. Oh my God, they're not going to take them off the ballot. What now? I never really believed that it would ultimately happen because there's too much possibility for loopholes and that sort of thing. And for me, to a certain extent, I hope he doesn't get taken off the ballot. At this point, maybe I've changed my mind from what I felt
Yeah.
before because I just want him I want him out of the equation. But if they take him out of the ballot now, that gives 9 or 10 months to the Republicans to regroup and put together a stronger fight against Democrats. Um, and
Hmm.
the longer Donald Trump stays as the nominee, the less time they are going to be able to mount anything against the Democrats come November. So I'd rather at this point, I look at now to November as a wash in Congress. Nothing's going to happen. And in terms of politics, Donald Trump has a wonderful way of implicating himself, fucking up, and saying the wrong thing. And I'd hate to shut him down now
Yeah.
while we're on the road to what I think is a certain victory in November.
Yeah, I think what I agree about that is because Trump is a mask off type of person.
Yeah.
And the longer he is in the race, the longer he is the face of the Republican Party, the longer people get to see them for who they are. Because there is no covering up, there's no hiding it with Trump. He's just out there saying whatever and doing whatever. I actually thought that he might have learned that lesson, but then he turned around a couple of days later and proved me wrong. But I think just because he's so extreme and mask off in his extremism, I think we need him to be out there for as long as possible to give as many people an opportunity to see that as possible. I saw the other day there was just like this, you know how they do, I don't know what you call them, but those little focus groups.
Yeah.
And these were all like Republicans, and they they were not fans of overturning Roe v. Wade, even as Republicans.
Right.
And so the guy doing the focus group, he asked, how many of you think Trump is at fault for overturning Roe v. Wade? No one raised their hand, just one woman. And she said, well, maybe he's a little bit at fault because he is the one who put those justices on the Supreme Court. So maybe he's like a little bit responsible for it. These people are not seeing where he's like, I'm taking credit for it. If it wasn't for me, it wouldn't have been happening, blah, blah, blah. So there's still people out there who is kind of like in these bubbles who
Right.
need to see it. And the longer he's out there, the more exposure he gets where people have the opportunity to remember why we didn't elect this fool for a second time. Like
Right.
people really do need to see that.
Well, he made a response after that whole Supreme Court thing, the oral arguments, and it
Yeah,
was as if he had no clue what was going on. Clearly, he didn't listen to it. He said,
he didn't.
I thought it was a good presentation and all this," and then he went off on a rant about all the same shit he rants about. I mean, it. I was embarrassed for him. If I liked him at all, I would be embarrassed for him. I spent more time laughing at how ridiculous it is, and so do the moderators. They put it on and they say, "Here's his response," and then they have to turn it off because it's so ridiculous, and they're giggling to themselves because this man is so inarticulate and so fucking ignorant.
When I started laughing, when Donald Trump said he listened to the arguments, he was not anywhere listening to those arguments. He was just waiting for people to tell him how it went, which is so weird because he already knows the people around him, if it would have went horribly, they would have told him, oh yeah, it went good, it went all right. He did not sit there and listen to oral arguments.
Uh,
If he did, I will give you my right arm, and I'm right-handed.
Yeah, yeah. He just does it to himself each and every time. He fucks himself over every time. So I'm thinking we've got to be at most three
Did you hear what
weeks.
he said? Did you hear what he said about Nancy Pelosi?
No, no, go ahead.
So he's standing out there after the oral arguments, and his attorneys just argued for like an hour or so about the fact that it was a protest turned into a riot gone wrong. It was anything but an insurrection. It's literally what his attorneys argued. So he stood his butt out there and said, it was Nancy Pelosi's insurrection. It was an insurrection, but Nancy Pelosi did it. He literally said that right after his attorneys just argued that it was everything but an insurrection.
And somebody needs to ask Donald
It's
Trump,
not going to phase.
why would Nancy Pelosi have an
Ask him what.
insurrection on her? Why would Nancy Pelosi have an insurrection on her own party to disrupt the certification of the electoral votes of her candidate? It makes no fucking sense.
That's what he said. You
Oh, I
have to
know.
watch that interview. It was cringy to watch it. It was so cringy to watch it, but it was just like, what are you talking about? This was Nancy Pelosi's insurrection. And then he went on and he said something about there was no weapons, there was no guns, except for when they shot Ashley Babbitt. It wasn't this, it wasn't that, but it was an insurrection. It was just Nancy Pelosi's insurrection. He
Yeah,
stood out there and he said it. And I'm just like, you are such an idiot. But,
he's been trying to pawn that off for a long time that Nancy Pelosi somehow had control of the National Guard and she held them back. Um, but the fact of the
yeah.
matter is that's already been debunked. First of all, she didn't have control of the National Guard. Um, why wouldn't she stop an insurrection where she's inside and endanger herself and her friends? Um, but the fact of the matter is, the ultimate control of the National Guard was Donald Trump by way of Michael Flynn's brother, who was in the Pentagon, who was in charge of that, taking orders from Donald Trump. It was Donald Trump. I mean, this is what Donald Trump does. He will take something so obvious and tell you it's not true.
Mhm.
And it amazes me that there are
Yeah.
people who will believe it. I mean, like this instance where it's Nancy Pelosi's. That's already been proven to be bullshit. But he still keeps spewing it. This guy needs somebody to give him better material. because the shit he's spewing now is pretty fucking weak. You'd have to be incredibly stupid or misinformed to even buy into anything he says. Everything he says is a lie.
Well, it's not just him. It's kind of like all of them.
Well, yeah,
Laura Trump,
absolutely.
Laura, is it Laura Trump? Laura Trump?
Yeah, his
Yeah,
daughter-in-law.
this heifer just set her butt on television and said literally that Donald Trump, he's not going to have time to golf. This is the same thing this fool said in 2015, 2016. He's going
Mm.
to be, he does not have time to golf. She said he can barely golf now because he's on the campaign trail. In 2025, he won't be golfing at all because he's going to be too busy saving the country. That is recycled material from 2015. And they act like he was never a president for 4 years and that we did not see him golfing the whole 298 times that he golfed during his presidency and the $144 million that it cost taxpayers. But she's
Right.
going to sit here and tell us that in 2025, oh, it's going to be different then. You
You
know how
know,
that he didn't solve that border crisis the first 4 years? Oh, it's going to be different then. You know how before he couldn't do it with an executive order? He's going to do it this time. It's everything that he said he was going to do before he was president and he didn't do it. They're recycling it, saying he's going to do it this time. It's insane to me. It's absolutely insane to me.
well, it's like
But people
infrastructure.
believe it.
It's like infrastructure, the wall, healthcare. He said he was going to do all that stuff, and he
Yep.
accomplished absolutely nothing. And the fact of the matter is he had 2 years with control in the House and the Senate. If there was ever a time that they could
Yeah.
have gotten something done, that would have been the time. And I'll guarantee you this: Joe Biden, when he wins in November, if he gets control of the House and the Senate, a lot of shit. If Joe's doing, if he's on the ball, there'll be a lot of shit done in those first 2 years to set the tone for the next 2 years. But you know, when you hear Donald Trump talk about Nancy Pelosi, and then you hear the lawyers saying, "Well, it wasn't insurrection; it was just a riot," and that's what they hang their hat on. It seems to
Yeah.
be in line with like the E. Jean
Hmm.
Carroll thing and Rudy Giuliani. I don't know if you heard this comment. Um, there was some question whether or not what Donald Trump did to E. Jean Carroll was rape or just sexual assault. And the reason they said it was sexual assault is because the people in the jury just didn't understand the definition. Um, that they thought it had to be penetration with a penis as opposed to, and they didn't know for sure whether it was his digits or whatever. It's fucking disgusting. So Rudy Giuliani's complaining about Donald Trump's E. Jean Carroll situation, and his argument is, well, they keep calling it was rape. It was just sexual assault. Oh, okay, that's better. Fucking A, I can't believe how lame their arguments are, and they don't get it. I mean, these are professional people that know fucking better, and they have the audacity to say this stuff. And it can't be because they're that stupid. They're insulting us because they think we're that stupid.
Yeah, it will never cease to amaze me the willingness to tie themselves into pretzels to excuse this man's behavior.
Right.
Um, I think one of the most like egregious things about all of this is these people are saying this when they have to go home and look at daughters and wives and sisters and aunties and mothers, and they never ask themselves, before I go on this national television and say something this horrible, if my the woman in my life comes to me and says some guy used his fingers instead of his penis, how am I going to explain that away?
Is that
I
better?
just think that there's absolute yeah, I don't even know how these people sit in a chair when they don't have a spine, like
Right.
literally no spine at all whatsoever is insane to me. And then when they're done doing this dirt and twisting themselves into pretzels and embarrassing themselves and taking away their spines, that they will think that Donald Trump still won't turn on them because he does and he will. That's just how he rolls.
When we come back from the break, I want to talk a little bit about that bipartisan border bill, because there were some things that came out that gave us some information, some clarifications on why these people behave the way they do. And I want to talk about the special counsel's
Yeah,
report on Joe Biden's thing. That's intriguing to me. I just wanted to mention one thing. Rudy Giuliani. I don't know even why he's talking anymore, because he's done. He's over. He can't move. But he made one suggestion. I think we've talked about this before. What he owes people is important now, because he's in bankruptcy and because he's going to have all his money taken away from him. He made an interesting statement. He says, and by the way, Donald
yeah.
Trump owes me $2 million, because he never paid him for his legal advice. I wouldn't have paid the motherfucker either. But the ironic thing about this is that when they're extracting money from Rudy Giuliani, they're going to go to Donald Trump and try to collect that $2 million. He's going to have to pay Rudy Giuliani's shit, and he doesn't have any choice about it. I mean, every turn, Donald Trump is getting absolutely eviscerated and being drained of every bit of money he has. Rudy Giuliani's in sad shape right now, but it's going to be as bad or worse for Donald Trump in a short order here.
Think about like how not notorious of a crook you have to be to where there's someone sitting there kissing your butt, singing your praises, and at the same time saying that you owe them $2 million. Like, if his parents weren't dead and gone, I swear to God, he'd owe them money too. Like this
Yeah.
man, he owes everybody everything. Rudy Giuliani, I think it's so sad to see somebody low go lower.
Yeah.
When you think there's just nothing left for him to go. But he seems to just keep going lower and lower and lower. I think the only other person that's on that level is Mike Lindell. I think those two are just
Mike
the
Lindell,
lowest of
I,
the
s-
low.
I saw a
Um,
video of Mike Lindell literally selling
yeah,
pictures out of his office and, and
I saw that too.
memorabilia. Oh, Jesus Christ. Uh,
Did you see
there's,
the one with the was it a lion or a tiger?
yeah. The thing about it is when
Wait,
I,
do you think those pictures are a con?
oh no, not Mike Lindell. No, I don't know what the fuck they're doing, but when you talk
You mean
about
to
going
tell me the
low,
blind guy didn't draw that portrait?
maybe not. I mean, but he's probably got evidence that we'll see in his next symposium. So we got that working for us. But when you talk about going low for Rudy Giuliani, Mike Lindell, and even Donald Trump, there was a quote somebody said to
Mhm.
me, and it always stuck with me for years and years. And now that I think about this quote, uh, it sounds like something you would say, because you always come up with these clever asides from your grandmother or whatever. And he says, "That boy is lower than a snake's hips." and that applies to these dumb fucks.
Yeah, my grandmother used to always say, "Oof, if you went any lower, you'd be looking at me from the other side." But I just think that it's I think what the difference between Mike Lindell and Rudy Giuliani is at this point when I look at Rudy Giuliani, I do see a level of he's given up at this point. I think
Yeah.
that he is trying to keep up appearances, but I think that he's very aware of his fate, and I do think on some level he has given up. I think he's just trying to keep up appearances and just kind of like keep whatever income flowing in that he can. Mike Lindell, I do think that he is still hopeful for some strange reason. I even saw him sitting like it's so weird that he doesn't pick up on Steve Bannon trolling him because that's all Steve Bannon does with this guy.
Right.
But Steve Bannon was asking him about being the next stepping in for Ronna McDaniel at the RNC. And he's just like, "Yep, I would love to do that. We have the evidence, we just need the resources, blah, blah, blah." We're like literally on the verge of another election, and he's still trying to resolve the last one. I thought that was pretty, like the way Steve Bannon trolls him, it's like it's a joke that everyone is in on a joke except for Mike Lindell. And
Yeah.
sometimes I do kind of feel bad for him because it's like you don't even realize he's not being serious, he's trolling you.
Well,
But the
he,
fact that he is talking about taking her place.
well, he did the
Oh,
same
go
thing with
ahead.
this. He did the same thing with the Speaker of the House. Yeah, I'll run for Speaker of the House. I'll be the Speaker of the House.
Mhm.
I'll straighten this shit out. People are just prodding him, and he
Yeah.
thinks they're serious, and he'll jump on. Fucker needs a job right
Yeah.
now, so I'll be Speaker of the House. I'll be the head of the RNC. Yeah, fuck, I'll be Donald Trump's diaper changer. It doesn't matter. He needs something.
Yeah, it to me is it's always good to have hope. Don't give up. You should have hope. But it's when your hope is delusional,
Yeah,
that's the problem. Like I would never sit here and say, you know what? I'm not giving up on my dream of being on Sports Illustrated. Because at some point you do have to live in reality.
right.
And I think that for him being hopeful and, deep in his faith, there's nothing wrong with that. But his delusion, it's it's giving him false hope. And that's so sad to me. Is I just look at him as such a pathetic figure in all of this.
Well, doing what I do on TikTok and in the podcast, I'm known for being the hope guy, always giving some hope. And as the guy who always sees
Mhm.
hope some way, somehow, I need to say to Mike Lindell and Rudy Giuliani, there's no hope to find. You're fucking hopeless. You're done. If you're coming to me to look for hope, sorry, I got none for you. You're fucking done.
I'm not gonna tell him that to be hopeful. I'm just gonna tell him to hope for something else, Like
Yeah,
don't
but
hope for overturning that election. Just hope for something else. Don't hope for
oh,
pillows. Hope for a comforter, or you know what, you can make car cushions or something. Just not that type of hope. Hope for something else.
yeah,
There's
no
plenty of
shit.
hope out there. Find
No
something else
shit.
to hope on.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. We'll take a quick break. We got a lot more stuff to talk about. Old Soul will be back with us in the second half, of course. So you hold on, and we'll be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Old Soul is our reoccurring guest on the program. It's always a pleasure to have her because she has some insights. I always feel dumb when you're on the show because you seem to know a lot and you know more than me in a lot of things. You're more studied on a lot of things. I'm more shooting from the hip and kind of analyzing stuff. But when it comes to in-depth information, you're on top of that shit. So I'm thankful when you come in.
I think I'm more boring than you are. I can sit there for hours and watch and watch C-SPAN, CBS, PBS.
Yeah, I
I used to
know.
watch Frontline as a kid, so I've always been boring.
It's not boring. You have a natural curiosity for history and news and thank God for that because you're a valuable part of the community because you are so knowledgeable and interested in that sort of thing. I've got a couple areas I want to go into, but I think I want to bring up the fact that Old Soul, the young lady who's not on social media at all, anywhere except this podcast, really, is making a public appearance someplace at a request of a group. Isn't that right? You're flying to Ohio to give a
Yes,
talk.
yes.
I got 950
Hmm.
shows. Nobody's called me about shit. You come on the Rational Boomer podcast a couple of times, and the gentleman, maybe explain who the gentleman is. And I don't know if I should take offense to this, but you were answering questions on his page, and he said, "Oh yeah, I saw you on the internet. You were with that old guy, right? I think that's awesome. But tell us what you're doing because
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, so there's a progressive event that's going to be in Cincinnati, Ohio this weekend. Getting people to register to let them know what's at stake on the ballot, especially in that state. But more importantly, we're just trying to spread the word that it's not just about the presidency, it's about the local elections. And so we're just trying to spread the awareness on that. My part, of course, is just to talk to the women about the women and girls who I've had in my home and let them know how devastating it could be if you're not voting down ballot for candidates who are not trying to take your rights away.
Right.
I do have a slogan for my speeches,
Let's hear
and
it.
it's
Or is it a secret?
wear red, vote blue. Yeah, like wear red, vote blue if you have to. That's my whole little
I like
that's
it.
how
I
I'm
like
bringing
it.
the speech together, so
Now you're not going to be doing any song or dance up there. It's just you talking. You're not going to throw some entertainment
yeah,
value
just
into it.
yeah, just me talking, but I do know that they are, going to be doing some canvassing, and believe it or not, I do wanna try it. I've
Now,
never knocked on a stranger's door before, but, I'm that person where it's like, "You know what? Let me try it. What's the worst that can happen?"
well, you've never knocked on a stranger's door, but you've opened the door for a lot of strangers,
Mm-mm.
which is impressive. Um, um, tell the folks that the reason you're going out there is because of a creator on YouTube, right? Maybe give that name. Some people might know
Yeah.
who he is.
So Pondering Politics, if you go to his channel, you can go to the community tab. He did a video, I want to say it's like somewhere between like a minute and 3 minutes long. And then if you click on that video, like in the description box, there is a form where you can sign up if you want to, if you're either in Ohio or if you don't mind going, which is kind of last minute because this is gonna air Friday, so it's gonna be Saturday and Sunday. But you can click on there, you can fill it out. You can go out there, you can do some canvassing. I don't think they have any more like slots for like speaking engagements to other people, but you can definitely volunteer and help out. And if you're in Ohio, just
And
click on the link and let's talk.
what's the creator's name so they can find it?
His name is Josiah, but his channel is Pondering Politics, and
You
I used to
mentioned some
watch him when he
other.
was like a smaller channel.
You
Yeah,
mentioned
he
some.
got started. I think Pondering Politics got started with Luke Beasley.
Okay.
And then he kind of like did a spinoff from that because I know he writes for Luke Beasley a lot. He's a very, very good writer. Very good writer. I wish I was like half the writers this guy is, but he's a very good writer. But he got started writing and now he has his own YouTube channel. I think like maybe a week ago or so, he quit his regular job and it's just YouTube full time. I think he's at like 100 and something K now. So
Wow.
he's doing pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. But you said there
Yeah,
was
really good.
another creator that you were interested in meeting there too. Somebody of the
Yes,
fifth.
Bo of the fifth column.
What's
Mhm.
his deal?
He's gonna be part of the event too. Yeah, it's pretty big deal. I think Bo is just under 1 million subs. So um I'm a very tiny, tiny fish in this big old pond of other progressive creators, writers. A lot of these people who do volunteer and go, they have experience of being boots on the ground and getting people active and engaged in local politics. And I don't have that experience, but I do look forward to being around people like that so I can soak up some of that experience and get some motivation to maybe go to another state or so and do something like
Yeah.
that again in the future.
Well, you do have a lot of experience dealing with the individuals involved in this and their trials and tribulations and helping them out. So don't sell yourself short. Whether you have 1 million followers or whether you've done all these major things, what you're doing is important. And I'm sure they saw that in you and your ability to communicate that. So uh, you're going to be in a good position to go out there, and they're lucky to have you out there. And I'm excited for you because the only thing I'm worried about is you're going to go out there, you're going to hit it pretty big. I'm going to come to you next Wednesday or Thursday and say, Old Soul, you got time? You know, Mike, I'm busy. I'm real busy. But more people should be hearing from you, you know? I think a lot of people
I'll
would do
say,
well by hearing from you.
have your people call my people.
Yeah, I'll be your agent.
Ain't that what they say in Hollywood? I'll have my people call your people.
Yeah, I used to represent people in the entertainment business. If you want to negotiate something out, I'd be happy to do it for you, for the customary 15%, but I'd be happy to do it. All right. Well, good luck with that. I'm sure you're
Oh
going to
my
do a great
goodness.
job. I'm sure you're going to do a great job.
Thank
And
you.
um, I wanted to talk about this border bill thing. I know I've talked about it on the podcast before, but some other things have come up about it. When you heard about this bipartisan border bill, the Republicans basically got everything they asked for. This was the most stringent
Yeah.
bill for the border in the history of this country. And then it gets to the
Yep.
Senate, and the people who put this thing together, the architects of this thing, shoot it down. So it's nowhere to be found anymore. What were your thoughts when you saw that? You probably weren't surprised.
I thought that it would pass in the Senate,
I did
and
too.
then I thought when it got to the House, it would be a toss up. I thought, maybe 50-50 it can go and or it won't. That was my idea. I didn't have any hopes on it either way. I just said, "Oh, yeah, we're just gonna have to sit and watch how this plays out." I just wasn't expecting for it to blow up in the Senate. I should have known when Mitch McConnell started, hmm, what's a good word?
Half
Cowering.
stepping, half
Uh,
stepping to, t-
yeah,
to take your culture's vernacular.
I almost said froze, but that would have been so inappropriate.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when I saw when I saw him easing up on it, I said, "Ugh, yeah, this probably isn't gonna be good." I should have knew then, but I still had hope because, they actually did work hard in the Senate. This wasn't like a bill that came out of nowhere. They were working on this for a while, and I know how dedicated both sides of it was, even if it was for two different reasons. We want to make sure that we protect our allies. We want to make sure that Europe is okay. We want to be sure that we're still leaders. And,
Right.
and part of being a leader is we have to be able to help these sovereign countries. So I know that that was the Democrats' focus was Ukraine. Um, and I knew that for Republicans, it was pretty political and demonizing people at the border is their motivation. But nonetheless, they both worked hard for what they wanted, and they came to a mutual agreement where Democrats gave up far more than what they got. And I just didn't think that they would let that hard work go to waste. If I were working on a project, I don't care what it's for, and you just tell me, yeah, you just did 4 months worth of work for nothing, I'm
Yeah.
gonna feel some type of way about it. But
Well, and the
it
Republicans
happened.
will never get a deal that good again. They shit
Nope.
themselves in that situation.
Mm-mm,
They'll never get that deal again. And people wonder why it
mm-mm.
happens. And I guess the common thought is that Donald Trump said, "No, I don't want it to pass because I don't want Joe Biden to win." That was the reason why it didn't
Mhm,
pass. And then I heard something else, and I'm curious as to what you think about this. Certainly, Donald Trump had everything to do with this. He's willing to take a beating on the border because the Republicans will. They're going to turn it around on them, saying they're the ones that don't want to fix the border, not the Democrats. They were ready to do it. But, always people always say, what does Donald Trump have on these people? What's going on? Why do they do his bidding no matter what after failing so many times? Now, there's a Senator Ray Lankford. He's a Republican, and he was one of the architects of this bill. One of the guys that spent 4 months on it. He was the one protecting it up to a point. But when the vote came down, he voted against it. And he said some bullshit. Well, the timing's not right, which I find weird because they keep telling us that it is crisis down there on the border, and they're saying, it's really not the right time. That makes no sense. But Ray Lankford said something that was interesting. He said that he was contacted by a national moderator, a national talking head. And this talking head told him if he passes a border bill through the Senate during this presidential administration, that he will destroy Ray Lankford's life. And Ray Lankford said, I take him at its word because he's already started to try to do that. And I started thinking, who would do that? Certainly not anybody on CNN or MSNBC, not even OAN and Newsmax, because they don't have that kind of pull. So obviously Fox News is the place that I honed in on. And of the people on Fox News, there are two people, Hannity or Tucker Carlson. And Tucker Carlson's out on Fox News, and he's kind of on his own, flitting around in Russia and all that stuff. So it has to be Hannity in my mind. And it makes sense because Hannity is Trump's best friend during the Trump administration. Turns out he was essentially an advisor to this. So the problem the Republicans have, not only that Donald Trump is going to destroy you, that now Fox News or other media outlets are putting the pressure on politicians. And the problem I have with that, the media shouldn't have that kind of power over the decisions that affect this country. Now, you have a different take on it, and I'm curious to hear what you're thinking.
I think we're both pointed in the Fox News direction. But for the senator, normally I would feel some type of way, Republican or not. You should not be getting death threats. You should be able to do your job. You should be able to serve your constituents, and you should not be threatened for doing so.
Right.
Especially when it's, and I really do think he believed in the bill that he was co-sponsoring. I really do believe that.
He
I
did, yeah.
just, the problem that I have with him is when he got up there and he said he was threatened. When you said why you voted against the bill, you said now is not the time.
Right.
That was the time to say that you were being threatened,
Yeah.
not later. You should have
Right.
said it then when it happened.
Right.
So that's the issue that I have with him. I thought, honestly, the person behind it was Laura Ingraham. I really did. And when he used the
Oh, come
pronouns
on.
he,
Laura's a sweetheart.
uh, when he used that program he, I said, oh yeah, because this heifer is smart enough, and if you watch her program, she's been throwing threats at these people on her program on a nightly basis. But she is smart enough. She's smarter than Trump not to get on the phone and do it herself. So I'm thinking it's a producer or someone for her that reached out to him like, hey, you can be touched. And I think that's what happened. I think she was the one behind it. And I've been watching all her little subliminals through her program. And she is just like threatening left and right and up and down. She's using that kind of mob style threats that Trump does, like, oh, I would hate something to happen to you, or that type of thing. She's constantly doing it. And I think that's where the threats came from. I really do. I don't think Hannity had anything to do with it. And I also think Hannity, he knows. He sits there across from Trump and he tries to say stuff like, you didn't really mean to say that, did you? You meant to say this. They're twisting your words. The media this, the media that. I really do think Hannity is like, I don't want him to be reelected. He's an idiot. Let's get somebody else in there. I don't even think he would go that far to do Trump's dirty work. I really do think that heifer was behind it.
I think Hannity's probably smarter than Laura Ingraham, and she is a bit out there. My concern now is, as I talk to you about this, and I listen to you suggest Laura Ingraham or whatever the fuck her name is, I'm worried now that if I'm not being a little sexist here, I never considered her. And was it because she was a woman and because Hannity's? I don't know. I hope I'm not being sexist here. It's somebody at Fox. There's no question. And I understand. I don't watch the clips from Hannity or Laura, so I don't know as much about it as you do. I just assume they're all fucking criminal. But you make a good point. and it could be, and that needs to be exposed. But I don't think he'll do it
Yeah, it's
because,
for me, it's the yeah. He's he's not gonna I don't know, like for my grandmother used to always say, if you're gonna tell it all.
yeah,
How you gonna get up there and half snitch? If you're gonna tell, just tell. Don't say a producer or this person or that person. Call them out. And you have an incentive to call this person out because they threatened you.
right,
Oh, you want to threaten me? Okay, then I can just out you on national television. And then why are you afraid of Fox News? You just seen their last settlements? They
yeah,
can be touched. They're not above being sued. They're not above paying out. They've done it plenty of times. Look at Bill O'Reilly and his sexual assaults that he had. These people are not above being touched. There's no way you can call me and threaten my career or anything about me. And the first words out of my mouth will be, "Oh, yeah."
yeah.
You don't want to hear me say that because you, let's do it.
Well, the
I'm just not one of those people who could be threatened like that.
thing about it is Fox News is known to be a liar on all levels. They lost the 800 million to um, Dominion. They're going to be sued here
Yeah.
anytime now for $2.4 billion by Smartmatic. And I don't know if you saw this story. I was going to bring it up anyway. It's a small story, but who was it? Was it Hannity? Hannity was interviewing a gentleman by the name of Curtis Sliwa. Now, I've heard about Curtis Sliwa
Oh
since
my
the
God.
70s. He is the man in charge of the Guardian Angels, which is a racist Republican vigilante group that used to roam the streets of New York, keeping New York safe. Now, on this interview, you see them talking, and you hear a scuffling going on, and Curtis Sliwa says, "Yeah, see, they're getting another immigrant right there. They're invading this country. It's horrific." And of course, Hannity, being a smart newsman, says, "Why don't you turn the camera so we can see this?" And so what happens is, um, uh, it shows all these guardian ages, these goofballs with the fucking berets. I don't know why they do that. The last thing I'm going to do to look tough is put on a fucking beret. I don't know. That's just me. But uh but they're wrestling this poor guy down to the ground. Later, we found out he was a U.S. citizen. He just happened to be brown in New York in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, people will say, well, shit happens, mistakes happen. You got to give him that break. But what people don't know that Curtis Sliwa is known for doing these sorts of things. In 1991, he went on trial and he had to admit that he faked some heroic rescue on a subway and that he lied about police officers kidnapping him. This whole performative thing and this lying and setting up situations just like what happened are commonplace in his history. And he's a slimy piece of shit. And the fact that Fox News ever even considered talking to him tells you a lot about Fox News.
You know, I would say that Fox News, I don't know why they're called Fox News because there's nothing newsworthy about them. It's pure entertainment and opinion pieces per their defense in all of their lawsuits.
Right.
But I do know that like the producer for the David Pakman show, he's gone on Fox News live, I think like 2 or 3 times now, claiming to be somebody else. They don't realize who he is till halfway through the segment when he's just trolling them on national television. So it is possible that they didn't know about this guy's background. But when I first saw that, the first thing I thought about, I don't know if you remember, but when I was growing up in the 80s, they used to have like these gay bashings.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing that I thought about was these vigilante right wing nutballs. They used to just go around, and if they had any kind of like inkling or suspicious that you were gay, they would just start beating on you for no reason. They were allowed to get away with it. I do remember seeing something similar to that on the news, except for it was for a gay person, a gay
Right.
guy that they were jumping on. Um, and that's just what it reminded me of. And I thought to myself, like, I thought we were past this type of stuff. I thought this behavior just wasn't acceptable, regardless of who was on the other end of the beating.
Yeah.
But Hannity, he takes it and he makes it look like they're doing something courageous. When you
Right.
have 5 guys on top of another guy, that's the most cowardly thing that you can do. There's absolutely nothing courageous about that. It was very upsetting to watch, and I it kind of leaves me speechless to see that type of behavior being promoted.
Well, this is an illustration. This incident is an illustration of something I've been saying about this Republican or Trump-lefuck messaging. It's pervasive and it's insidious. Um, every time you hear about these things with Donald Trump is winning in the polls, this or that, and all these complaints against Joe Biden and the Democrats, I always ask people, where did you hear that from? And nobody can ever tell me. And what's
Mm,
happening is they're just throwing it out in the ether, let it bounce around for a while, and people grab it and assume it's real. And that's what Fox News was trying to do with this. Oh, look, Curtis Lewa is attacking the migrants. They're invading New York. They want to get that message out. And that brings me to another story that I find kind of troubling. And I almost sound like I'm talking about a conspiracy theory, and I don't mean to do that, but it just seems weird to me. I mean, you're very intuitive, and when there's some things that you hear and you go, "There's something off about that." Now we know
mhm,
that their special counsel, a guy by the name of Her, released a report today because he was investigating the classified documents case for Joe Biden. Okay. They found some in his garage, they found some in his house. I expected they'd come out and say, there's nothing here, no charges, go on. But that's not what happened. They came out and said that Joe Biden was somehow involved willfully, as if he did it on purpose, if he's culpable for taking these documents and hiding them away from when he was vice president. We're talking 40 years ago. So, or 30 years ago, or whatever it was. But they said he took these willfully, but they said he gave them back when asked. He was compliant with them when they asked for them back, and he said there would be no charges. Okay, but he didn't stop there. He could have stopped there. That was the whole case. You really didn't know go any deeper. But now he's going to have to go into his personal opinion. And he starts suggesting that, yeah, Joe's got a lot of problems with memory. He doesn't remember anything. He doesn't even remember when his son died. And I'm thinking, what's that got to do with it? And why now? Why at this moment in time is this guy talking about Joe's memory when that's one of the only things they can hit Joe Biden with now, meaning the Republicans? Is it somehow this pervasive messaging that the Republicans put out there? Did they get to him? Because if you watch Joe talk, you don't see that memory loss like you do with Donald Trump. He probably has some because he's 80 years
mhm.
old, but it's not as pervasive and as bad as this guy said. And I thought, why would he do that? I mean, how did this guy get in this position? And we know how he got in this position. He was appointed by Merrick Garland. Now, for a long time now,
Yeah,
when Merrick Garland first got appointed, I thought it was a great thing. He's intelligent guy. He's has a reasonable mind. He's a great jurist. He seems to be honest. And I thought it was a good situation to put him in. But as of late, I've had trouble with Merrick Garland um, because he seems too tentative. He seems too concerned about the public opinion. He seems slow and not assertive about doing things. And if people want to argue that, I'll just say this. When Donald Trump left office, it took Merrick Garland 2 years to even look into all the crimes, the multitudes of crimes that Donald Trump committed. It wasn't until he got pressure, and it wasn't until he hired Jack Smith. So then Joe Biden comes out and he's fucking furious because this is the wrong thing to say at the wrong time. It seems to set up. So Joe is angry as a motherfucker, and he has every right to do it. He got blindsided by a guy who was hired that he appointed. I think that they're not going to fire Merrick Garland now because they're in the middle of all these trials. But I'll guarantee you, when the trials end or the next election, that motherfucker's gone and he's a problem. I don't know what it is, but it seems weird to me. So I'm wondering what you think about that. Am I onto something or am I on something?
I think my problem personally with Merrick Garland started when I found out about the Trump's document case. Because I'm sitting here like, you went from saying, hey, you took some stuff that doesn't belong to you, we want it back, to politely asking for it back, then kind of aggressively asking for it back. And then you're pretty much begging for the documents back. Give me a break. So
Right,
that
right,
was my problem with him. The main problem with Merrick Garland is he is not apolitical at all. And you need to be when you are in that position. Jack Smith seems to be apolitical. He doesn't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, you can get it. That's pretty much like how he is. The facts are the facts, and I'm going to go where the facts lead me. Merrick Garland, he wants to seem like he doesn't want people to think he's a Democrat. He's a
right,
shill, he's whatever. Instead of just letting the facts lead to where they're going to lead, he's worried about the press seeing him a certain type of way. And it's like, how do you not know the fact that you were appointed by Joe Biden? No matter what you do, no matter who you hire, no matter who you put in charge of these cases, they are going to look at you as a Democrat and as you strictly work for Joe Biden. You don't work for the American people. He's catering to them by making sure, oh yeah, we have some Republicans in office, we have some this, we have some that. And there's typically nothing wrong with that, but right now you cannot do that because the Republicans, they cannot be trusted. It's just kind of like, I'm going to let a snake in my home just to prove to people that I'm not biased
right,
against snakes.
right. And I think that's what
That's
Joe
the
Biden did.
that's pretty much what he's yeah, that's what he's doing. He's letting all these snakes the into the DOJ just so that the world doesn't think that he's biased against snakes. And it's just kind of like at the end of the day, a snake is a snake. They have no business in the DOJ. And you need to get rid of them no matter how it looks, because this guy is supposed to give a factual briefing of what happened. His
Right.
opinion should be nowhere near it. The fact
No,
that he not only included his personal opinion, but he made it seem like after Bo passed away, Joe Biden had no idea what day it was, where he was, what was going on, what was happening, and like he's been the same since then. And that's not true at all. So not only did he put his own personal opinion in there, but it was fabricated. And I'm pretty sure after Bo passed away, Biden did struggle with that. I'm pretty sure he did, but he still got up and he did his job and he did it very well as VP. And he
well,
completely ignored all of that.
and that's my point is just the way it was presented. And I have to take a word or a couple of words from the Republicans. They use it all the time. It was more than a report. It was more than saying that Joe Biden fucked up. We aren't going to prosecute because this, that, or it's 100 years ago. Um, but it seemed like kind of a hit job. It seemed intentional that they were trying to embarrass the president, which is a dangerous thing to do when he's
Yeah.
still fucking president. Now, Merrick Garland, he's definitely
Mhm.
not Democrat, and that's fine. He is a member of the Federalist
Mhm.
Society, and the Federalist Society is a suspect group. That should be a
Yep.
hint that he's maybe not only not fair, but not on your side in any stretch of the imagination.
Mhm.
I'm thinking Joe Biden right now is fucking angry about this because not only did you, not even so much about the fact that you invoked his memory, I mean, you can see what he's like whenever he talks. But when he brought his son, his dead son, into this narrative, that was a fucking bridge too far. And I don't think Joe Biden will forget about it.
Yeah.
And I think Merrick Garden will take the heat and the hit for it. And I think he should. I don't know if there's any conspiracy theory to this that Merrick Garland is trying to undermine Joe Biden, but he's certainly not doing anything to help rule of law. And that's where I have the problem with Merrick Garland.
It's not a conspiracy theory because what report comes out of the DOJ with your own personal opinion attached to it? None. And if they do, as soon as that report is published, you need to be cleaning your desk out tomorrow, because why is your personal opinion in a report from the DOJ against the President of the United States? Why is that happening? And I don't think the DOJ's job is to protect Joe Biden, but I do think their job is to stick to the facts and the facts only. Why are you veering off away from those facts? I'm a firm believer that if Donald Trump would have given over those documents when he was asked, there would be no documents case. I don't even know how many other cases there would be, because there would not have been a need to put Jack Smith on any case to follow these trails to lead to other indictments.
Right.
The only other indictment that I'm pretty confident would have been there would have been from Georgia and Fonnie Willis. But the only reason Jack Smith was appointed in the first place is because after over a year of begging and pleading with Donald Trump, he would not give up those documents.
Right.
He forced Merrick Garland's hand. That's not something he wanted to do. It's not something he was prepared to do or willing to do. His hand was forced to do it, which means he shouldn't be in that position in the first place. And there was no raid on Mar-a-Lago. They went in plain clothes.
Yeah.
We as the public had absolutely no idea what was going on. If it wasn't for Donald Trump and his big mouth, we still wouldn't have known what happened.
Right.
They went in plain clothes. There was no raid. They served a search warrant and said, hey, can you give us our stuff? And he still didn't do it. To this day, he still got stuff in a secret room. And he's not being held accountable for any of that. And Merrick Garland is running around trying to make it seem like, well, I don't want people to think I'm against Republicans, so I'm just going to let all these snakes in. It's absolutely insane. It's crazy. It's crazy.
A couple of things to consider is when they had this raid, it wasn't a raid, it was a search. They called a couple days ahead of time and said, hey, we're coming. Then they knock on the door in their golf shirts and say, you wouldn't mind if we came in, would you? I mean, it was just weak from the get-go. But if you're looking at Joe Biden's investigation on the classified documents, you remember that while Joe Biden had this issue, so did Mike Pence. And the Mike Pence investigation, interestingly enough, wrapped up in a month. And they said, it's all good. It was just a fuck up. It was a mistake. Pence is fine. And I assume that's what they would do with Joe Biden, because Biden, I mean, what is Joe Biden hadn't seen these documents in 30 years. So, but then they come out with this. All of this, when I look at this seems very suspicious. And maybe I'm cynical, but it just seems very suspicious. They're looking for talking points to fight.
Suspicious, you know. Yeah, definitely. And not only that, for me, what Donald Trump did was a crime and it was egregious. I don't think that Biden or Pence committed a crime. I do think it was an oversight on their behalf. I know that they have briefings. They have to get up early in the morning for briefings. They need to be prepared. So, of course, they're going to take work home, read over everything so they're prepared in the morning.
Right.
Donald Trump doesn't read. He had absolutely no reason taking briefings home and preparing for anything when we hear from Jared Kushner that, you know, they were giving him pictures because he didn't like to read. Like, here's a picture of a missile. Here's a picture of, like, he just didn't read. So why were you taking documents home? There was no reason. And then when you did take them home, why were you hiding them?
Right.
And I think people fail to see that with Biden, he could have like went and found those documents and put it in his fireplace and we would not know about it. It would have just been a Donald Trump and a Pence thing. But he said, you know what, I found these, I have to look and see. I found these documents. Let me volunteer and turn these over and let me open up myself to an investigation. Trump would never, ever, 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 ever be man enough to do that. Admit
No,
he did something wrong, own up to it, and let the chips fall where they may. He is incapable of doing that. It's, to me, it's just so, it's frustrating to watch,
it is
just to
very.
see all of the things that is being put on him, all the fires he got to put out, like all these battles that he has to get through, and people can just look and just say, yeah, but he's old. It's like nothing else matters. It's
Right.
frustrating to watch that.
Well, as you might expect, after this came out about Joe Biden, Donald Trump had a response, and it was hard to follow, to say the least. But he did say something interesting. He said, "We have a two-tier justice system. Joe Biden should be prosecuted for this." And I'm thinking to myself, you just told us that presidents have immunity. And when you were in office, there were 10 counts of obstruction of justice from the Mueller report, and you didn't get indicted because you were a sitting president. This is all about Donald Trump thinks he should be treated special, like the Supreme Court prosecutor said, and everybody else should suffer the consequences. The guy is an absolute idiot. He is he's mentally and emotionally a very sick guy. He really is. I mean, all you have to do is watch him talk. It's just the same shit over and over, jumbled up. It doesn't make any sense. He can't stay on topic because he goes to that and he talks about Joe Biden, how he should go to jail, even though he's trying to tell us that presidents have immunity. Um, but then he goes off on other tangents about Georgia or whatever. The guy is just scattered at best, and it's almost frightening to think. I mean, it's like if you're getting on a bus and you hire a bus driver, and he's clearly high and hammered, and you go, "Yeah, go ahead, drive." You should know better than that. Why would you get in a vehicle with somebody who's mentally impaired? And Donald Trump is certainly mentally impaired.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at his supporters are a reflection of that. Um, they're scatterbrained, they're all over the place. When you ask them pointed questions,
It looks like old soul froze up, and we're coming toward the end of the show.
different lens than everyone else. And that's why he's allowed to get away with it. When you look at Hunter Biden, it's like, oh, he paid his taxes late.
Yeah,
Donald Trump, and he should be burned at the stake for this. This is the ultimate crime. You paid your taxes late, that's it. You need to get up out of here. But when you look at Trump, who didn't pay his taxes at all,
right.
oh, he's a genius. He found all the loopholes. He's so smart. He's such a great businessman. They all do it. And I
Well,
think it's just the enabling. I don't think, I think he's just so used to being pampered and enabled, and he's never been enabled to this high of a degree to where it's like he doesn't have to rein it in at all. He could just be as wild and outrageous and hypocritical as his heart desires. Just do it till you drop dead. But I probably shouldn't have said that.
no,
He can
you
do
can
it for the
say
rest of his life if he could.
we're not on TikTok. It's a Rational Boomer podcast. We can say anything we fucking want. And if Donald Trump were to keel over tomorrow, I'd be happy as a motherfucking clam. But yeah,
I
that's
wouldn't lose any sleep.
no. Leave it to old soul to be diplomatic. That's why we have you on, because I'm far from diplomatic. But I mean, that's the whole problem. For 7 years that Donald Trump has been in the political theater, we've got people that are enablers and complicit. We're talking about the Republican Party. We're talking about the fucking media, left and right side. The reason this
Yeah.
guy has run amok is because everybody allowed him to. They used him
Mhm.
for the attention he brought, whether it be to the Republican Party in fundraising or whether it be ratings in the media on both sides. They've used this guy up, which would be sad in the treatment of this guy, but in the process, it's mistreated all of us and this country. And now this media.
Yeah.
Somebody said one time, "Would you ever go on CNN or MSNBC?" I always say, "Listen, man, if I ever got on one of those channels, I don't want to, but if I did, I wouldn't be there long because because I'm going to tell them, I think you're at fault, motherfucker."
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's I've never seen anything like this kind of like enabling behaviors towards I've never seen it. When you look at just look at something basic, like look at the financial problems of the Republican Party. A lot of these small dollar donations are being dried up because Trump is draining that from them. He's
Right.
taking that in and he's not sharing it with anyone. He dried up the reserves at the RNC. Ronna McDaniel, she gets the blame for all of that when they clearly know who is responsible for it. Is it Ronna McDaniel or is it the six-time bankrupt wannabe billionaire who grifts money from all of our supporters, take our small dollar donations, spend $50 million in legal fees? It's not his fault. It's her fault.
Right. Right.
It's to that degree to where they enable him to the point to where they hurt themselves. And I think I've never seen anyone enable to the point where the person doing the enabling is the person who gets hurt from it the
Well,
most.
well, it's
I think if you enable a drug addict, you might lose money, you may lose your car or, materialistic things, but these people are losing a lot more by enabling Trump, and it just doesn't stop. It never ends. It's insane. It's almost like we have to step in and vote and get them in a minority to protect them from themselves,
right.
if that makes sense.
Well, no, exactly. I mean, this whole situation with the border thing, this is going to hurt them more than it
Hmm.
hurts the Democrats. And they
Oh
maybe
yeah.
realize it. They just don't care. When I look at the Republican Party and Donald Trump on a much grander scale, it's akin to a
Mhm.
small family of four, man, wife, two kids, and the husband is an alcoholic and an abuser. And because it's daddy or because it's the husband, the kids and the wife enable him. They put up with it because, he brings home the money for food and housing and stuff like that, and they enable him. And it always goes on for too long up until the time everything comes crashing down
Yeah.
and everybody's hurt. And that's what's going on in the Republican Party with Donald Trump right now.
Oh yeah. The inability to step outside of the bubble and look in is, to me, is mind blowing. I
Yeah.
think at some point, anytime you're in, and I really do feel that the relationship with Trump and the Republican Party, especially his base, is a very toxic and abusive relationship. Because the first thing that an abuser does is they strip you down from your belief system. So everything that they used to believe in, they used to believe in the border, and now all of a sudden they don't. They used to believe in states' rights, now all of a sudden they don't. They used to pretend to be conservative when it comes to money, now they don't. They used to have principles as far as not electing people who were not really Christian, but now they don't. It's just everything that they used to believe in, even pro police, pro small business owner. They are not pro any of that anymore.
Yeah.
Everything that they believed in has been stripped away from them. And I don't even think they realize that yet. Well, not the base, but I think a lot of them, they don't even realize that. When I watched that truckers convoy and the poor woman this almost got it but didn't quite get it, you can see how really hurt and disappointed she was that she didn't realize the grifting that's going on
Yeah.
with the leaders of the Republican Party. She didn't quite put it together, but there's so many people out there like her who are just completely misled and
Well,
everything she cared about is completely gone from her.
I think the most amazing thing about Donald Trump, as I've told you before, my father was a narcissist, bit of an alcoholic and abusive, not so much in a physical way to the kids, but abusive nonetheless. Um, my father was a pretty intelligent guy,
Yeah.
relatively speaking. Donald Trump is an absolute imbecile. I mean, there's no thought process to anything he does. It's
Hmm.
just all emotion, raw emotion, and he says whatever he thinks is going to be expedient to him at that time, whether it's contradictory of something he said before or he believes in the future. It's absolute insanity that anybody would follow somebody this dumb, but they do.
Yeah, he doesn't come up with his own things either.
Now,
I know that he overhears people saying things or people say things to him, and he tries to spout it off as if it's coming from him, and he always misses the mark. He is like the most idiotic person I've ever seen. Seriously, like personally, and I've known some dummies, especially someone to be on a national stage like that. It's
yeah.
like, how? How is this possible? Sometimes I feel like for any of your people listening who follows comics like I do, I always wonder like what timeline are we on? Like there's got to be another timeline of me somewhere who's not dealing with any of this crap. This is just this weird Trump timeline that I'm on right now. Like I just if I had the phone, I'd call the TVA right now and say, what timeline is this? But
No shit.
it
No
is what it
shit.
is.
Well, old soul, we're going to wrap things up here. Once again, thank you for coming on. I mean, every time you come on, it's always a great conversation. You have some great insights. I always look forward to the next time we can talk. So thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for your vote of confidence for this weekend.
Oh, I know you can do it.
It's needed. I'll keep that with me when I'm talking. So
And if you're going to be in Cincinnati this Saturday, Saturday or Sunday, um,
Saturday and Sunday.
Old Soul will be performing. There'll be no dancing or singing, but she'll be talking some serious talk.
Nope.
So check her out. Where can they find out about where you're going to be at again? Just tell them where they can check it out. You said there was a
Yeah, so
website?
just go to Pondering. Yeah, go to Pondering Politics, his YouTube channel. There should be a post on the community tab, and then there's also that short video where there's the link in the description there as well.
Well,
It's so crazy that I'm like directing people to go to someone else's community page because I don't have my own, but
yeah. Well, here's the deal. I get a lot of
I'm
people
still
who,
not tempted to do social media at all.
well, that's good.
Mm-mm.
You're probably, but if it, I get a lot of people who come and comment about your time on the show, and everybody always says, I'd love to meet her. Well, if you're in Cincinnati or nearby, you might have that opportunity. But she'll have security around her and bodyguards
Yeah.
and hairdressers and makeup people. It's going to be busy. Just wait your turn.
Just being some progressive YouTubers and writers, which is I can't wait to be around writers who actually know their stuff. So looking forward to soaking up some knowledge.
Well, you probably be giving out some knowledge as opposed to soaking it up, but I appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck. I know you're going to do a great job, so I'm not even worried about you. Um, Thank you for coming on. Those of you listening, I appreciate you taking the time to listen today. Hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.